Scott Adams, legendary creator of the cartoon Dilbert, a former skeptic and agnostic, announces that he will convert to Christianity in the final days of his life. What do we make of his surprising announcement? And is Pascal's wager, which he refers to not by name, but in practice, a good reason to become a Christian? We're going to watch this 2-minute announcement, which is a part of a larger conversation that he had, and then draw some very important points from it. Let's watch.
Whenever I talk about the simulation, and especially when I talk about my own impending death, many of my Christian friends and Christian followers say to me, "Scott, you still have time. You should convert to Christianity." And I usually just let that sit because that's not an argument I want to have. I've not been a believer, but I also have respect for any Christian who goes out of their way to try to convert me. Because how would I believe you and believe your own religion if you're not trying to convert me? So I have great respect for people who care enough that they want me to convert and then go out of their way to try to convince me. So you're going to hear for the first time today that it is my plan to convert. So I still have time, but my understanding is you're never too late. And on top of that, any skepticism I have about reality would certainly be instantly answered if I wake up in heaven. I do believe that the dominant Christian theory is that I would wake up in heaven if I have a good life. Yeah, I don't necessarily have to, state something in advance. And so, to my Christian friends, yes, it's coming. So you don't need to talk me into it. I am now convinced that the risk-reward is completely smart. If it turns out that there's nothing there, I've lost nothing. But I've respected your wishes, and I like doing that. If it turns out there is something there, and the Christian model is the closest to it, I win. So with your permission, I promise you that I will convert.
This is remarkable. Absolutely blows me away. And it's really clear that many Christians, either in person or online, have been talking with Scott for a long time. And he's clearly been thinking about it. He's educated, he's smart. In many ways, he's brilliant, and he's commented on these kind of topics for years. And of course, the end of somebody's life brings a certain clarity. It brings a certain gravity about these issues. And I think it's now at the forefront for him. I do think this is a part of a larger trend of the supernatural I've talked about in this channel, where it feels like almost every few weeks, or at least every couple months, someone new surprising comes out and says they believe in God. I just interviewed Charles Murray, New York Times best-selling author, MIT trained, Harvard trained, rooted in secularism, has a book out called Taking Religion Seriously. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, about 2 years ago, her conversion from atheist. Russell Brand, Hulk Hogan, over and over again. My only question is, who's going to be next in the next few weeks or couple months or so, similar to Scott Adams? Now, I do want to comment on a couple things that he said in these 2 minutes that it's important we think biblically and carefully about. He said, the dominant theory is that I will wake up in heaven if I have a good life. Now, I don't know Scott. It's very possible he's commented about this more and I just missed it. But if I were here with him, I would want to ask him, I'd say, tell me what you mean by a good life. I think the Bible and the teachings of Jesus are very clear that none of us have lived a completely good life. Romans 3 and Romans 6 makes it clear that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Jesus says no one is good. No one is good except God alone. Now, if he says, well, I'm not perfectly good, but my good deeds outweigh my bad deeds, I lived a largely good life. That is not a Christian way of thinking about salvation. every other religion, in some sense or another, we have to work our way to God by trying to do enough good deeds, that we contribute to our own salvation. I actually think Christianity is incredibly freeing because I don't have to put my good deeds and bad deeds on a scale and try by my efforts to live a good life. I can trust on what Christ has done for me. So the dominant Christian theory is not that we appear in heaven if we've done enough good deeds or lived a good life. Let me just appeal quickly to Jesus, Paul, and Peter, what they say about this. In Acts chapter 15, at the Jerusalem Council, so a number of the apostles are there coming to grips with the question of what do people in the church now and Gentiles have to continue practicing in light of the Jewish roots of the faith. And there was debate about this. And in Acts 15, Peter says, but we believe that we will be saved through the grace of Jesus Christ, just as they will. Jews and Gentiles, not by our works or efforts of living a good life, but of what God has done for us. Paul makes this clear in his letter to the Ephesians in chapter 2, verses 8 and 9. He says, for by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not your own doing, it's the gift of God, not a result of works, so no one may boast. And this is consistent with the message of Jesus. In the Gospel of John, chapter 6, it says, Jesus answered them, this is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he has sent, which of course is the person of Jesus, the Messiah, God in human flesh. So I don't know where Scott is. There's probably minimal chance he sees this. If he does, Scott, know that we are rooting for you. We are praying for you. We are proud of you. We are thankful for you. And I want to free you at this stage in your life from having to think that you have to look at your life and your good deeds outweigh your bad deeds. The Christian message is that we are separated from God for eternity, and none of us are good. But our confidence comes from what Christ has done for us. He lived a sinless life, paid the debt that we owe, and if by grace, through faith, we believe and trust in him, we will have eternal life. Now, one other thing you said, I just want to weigh in here a little bit, because it's tied to what's often called Pascal's wager. And you didn't use the term Pascal wager, of course, a mathematician and a scientist and a philosopher from the 17th century, brilliant, who was actually working on an apologetic of the Christian faith and died young. I think it's one of the great tragedies of really Christian history and apologetics. But Pascal's wager, basically he said there's four options. Either God exists or he doesn't exist. Either we believe or we don't. And this was not an argument that he was giving for why people should believe in God. Rather, he was trying to get people to count the cost of the weight of believing in God. It was really kind of a way of trying to motivate people to say, look what's at stake in believing in God, A, not believing in God, B. You need to stop in your busyness and distraction and think about the issues that matter most. So if I believe in God and God doesn't exist, I lose this life of living however I want to, finite loss. If I believe in God and God does exist, I gain everything, eternity. If I don't believe in God and God doesn't exist, I gain this life, finite gain. If I don't believe in God and he does exist, I've lost everything, eternal loss. So Pascal was trying to get people to understand the weight of why we need to believe in God. And I've had this conversation recently, had Shabbos on the channel here. He's an Orthodox Jew. And I just pushed back on him. I didn't use Pascal's wager. I said, if you are right, I still go to heaven. But if I'm right, you are separated from God for eternity. Now, that was not an argument to him. He's actually the one who I'd seen brought that up elsewhere. So I was simply saying, have you done your due diligence and really read the Gospels? Have you really thought about who is this person, Jesus, and why he shaped the world so profoundly? Have you considered the evidence for Christianity? Because see how much is at stake. So realize Pascal's wager is not an argument for the existence of God. An argument would be like the cosmological argument, which basically says whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. That's an argument deductive, two premises and a conclusion. You could give an argument for the resurrection, done in different ways, but typically people will point towards facts like the empty tomb, the appearance accounts, transformation of the disciples, the failure of naturalistic hypotheses, and argue that Jesus is the best explanation of the facts. These are arguments. Pascal's wager is not an argument. Now, clearly, Scott understands the weight of it because he realizes and he says he's towards the end of his life, however many days or weeks or hopefully months, maybe years God would give him. He has seen the end of the tunnel. But it's really important we understand that that's merely a motivation to ask the question, does God exist? And really the most important question, Jesus said, is who do you say that I am? At this point, what can we do? Pray for Scott, encourage him. He had a couple posts where I think maybe I misread it, where he seemed a little bit exasperated, like, okay, I'm not going to respond to all of these. I'm making up my mind. In fact, some of you are being so aggressive, it's almost pushing me the other direction if I read it the right way. So I'd encourage you to just pray for him. I would encourage you to positively comment. And like he said, we still do have time. If you are breathing and thinking and reasoning, you have time. But last thing I'll say, for those of you watching this going, you know what, like Scott, I have time. I will make that decision at the end of my life. We are not promised that we won't die of a heart attack, not promised you won't die in a car accident, not promised we'll be rational and have our faculties towards the end of our life. We're not promised that. So I would encourage you to consider the words of Jesus, which of course is at the root of a dominant theory, and ask the Christian dominant theory, who is the person of Jesus and how do I come to know him? Praying for you, Scott, and look forward to this announcement and hope and trust that it's rooted in the words and teachings of Jesus.